Which are the best PvE classes in Aion Classic? Following up on my video about the PvP tier list, which, if you haven't checked it out yet, you can do later, I decided it would be good to inform you how classes perform in PvE as well. I will give you my opinion about how classes are doing in both solo and group PvE in a tier list and why. If you like the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to get notified when a new video comes out. Without further delay, I will start with Templars, as I did in the previous video, and follow the same structure regarding classes. As the main tank of the game, this has drawbacks for the performance of the class in a solo PvE environment. The Templars have tons of survivability, but they lack damage because of that, and you will feel slow when you are soloing, even when you are using Great Sword. For this reason, I will rank them in the B tier when we are talking about solo gameplay in PvE. On the other hand, when we are talking about group PvE, in most cases, you will need a tank to clear harder content like dungeons. When you are looking for a group to enter a dungeon, you won't have to wait at all most of the time, and you will be instantly picked for the group. It's pretty obvious that Templars belong in the S tier for group PvE. Then we have the second warrior class, the Gladiators. In solo PvE, Gladiators lack sustain even though their damage is okay. Most of the time, because they are struggling solo, they will need help from support classes like clerics or chanters to have an easier time. Their kit has a lot of AoE skills, but that doesn't help them much when they are soloing. Gladiators, for me, belong in the B tier for solo PvE. When we are talking about group PvE gladiators and their AoE skills, they bring a lot to the table for easier clearing in dungeons. Because they will be in an environment where they have the support they need, they will excel and bring really good DPS. For this reason, they are S tier in group PvE. Next, we have the scout classes and the close-range version of them, assassins. Assassins have insane damage, and for this reason, they can easily destroy their targets in PvE. Even though they are not that tanky, they can clear the mobs fast, so they don't get a lot of hits, but sometimes when that's not the case, they face challenges. Assassins are in the A tier for solo PvE, in my opinion. The same goes when we are talking about assassins in group PvE. Even though they lack the AoE damage that gladiators bring, assassins have single target damage that goes through the roof. Keep in mind that you might have trouble finding a group sometimes because you belong to DPS classes, of course, and you are close range class. Assassins are in the S tier for group PvE because of their insane damage. Rangers, even though they are very good, especially in the early patches of the Aion Classic, have a serious drawback because they are literally paper. They can die so easily that it is not even funny. They are a glass cannon range physical DPS class with very good damage output, but the luck of sustain puts them in the A tier for solo PvE. The same goes for Rangers in group PvE. They do very good damage, and they do well in their job as DPS. But even though they are in a very good state overall and are a solid class to play, they feel like A tier for group PvE. Next in line, we have mages. Sorcerers are hands down one of the best classes overall. Easy to execute with tons of damage and CCs when it's needed. In solo PvE, they don't have a lot of problems clearing mobs due to their damage, and if something goes wrong, they have their CCs to back them up. Sorcerer deserves to be in the S tier for these reasons. When we are looking for sorcerers in group PvE, they are needed for the same reasons, especially for their CCs. They can make the lives of the group much easier while at the same time causing tons of damage. Overall, sorcerers are amazing in every way, and you can always find them at the top of the charts. They also cannot be in a lower tier than S for group PvE. Spirit Masters in solo PvE have a much easier time than most of the classes because they have their spirits to back them up. It's like they have always had a group mate with them, and they don't have any problem clearing content alone. If anything happens, they have the option of using Fear's CC to escape. They have very good overtime damage output with their curses, and they can relax in solo PvE. Spirit Masters are S tier when we are thinking about solo PvE. In group PvE, Spirit Masters might not cause insane damage on their own, but because they have special debuffs, like Spirit Erosion, that decrease the resistances of the target in a specific element, depending on the pet they are using, and also increase the drop rate of rare items, they can also remove buffs from their targets, which also drops the defense of the enemies. So they help the group overall in that way. Even though SM, in the minds of many, doesn't bring the best value to a group, I believe that they deserve to be considered in the S tier for group PvE. Last, we have priests. Clerics are the main healers of the game. They have the best sustain, but they lack damage. Even though they are independent and can totally solo easily, you might feel slow because of that, and that's something you must keep in mind. Clerics are an A-tier class for solo PvE because they don't need any external help, but they can still be a bit of a pain because of their low variety of damage skills. There is not much to say about clerics in group PvE. Every party needs a cleric as the main healer most of the time, and you will be able to find a group very easily. So for group PvE they belong in the S tier without a doubt. Chanters are a special case when we are talking about solo PvE. They have sustain because they can heal themselves and have buffs to help them, but their lack of damage is crazy. Even though they won't have problems soloing, it will feel extremely slow and might become boring for some of you. I will put Chanters in the B tier for solo PvE. On the other hand, in group PvE, we don't have a lot to say because everyone wants Chanters in their group to buff them and clear the content easier. As the main buff support of the game, Chanters are in the S tier for group PvE. And that concludes the PvE tier list of the classes. As a summary, some of the classes in solo PvE might feel slow, but other than that, most of them perform well. In group PvE, most of the time the first 3 slots are for Cleric, Templar, and Chanter, and then the DPS ones. Let me know in the comments what's on your mind and which class you prefer most for PvE. If you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel to get notified when new videos come out and also help me out on my journey. If you've stayed till now, I want to say a big thank you for your support, and I hope I will see you again in the next one.